The gold-embossed cardstock felt impossibly heavy in my hand, a stark rectangle of ivory and shimmering script against the cool, familiar granite of my kitchen island. It had been placed dead center, a deliberate, silent statement. I hadn't put it there. My son, Liam, must have left it when he'd stopped by earlier to pick up the dry cleaning I'd collected for him, a favor I'd been doing for years. For a moment, my heart fluttered with a familiar maternal warmth. He'd left me a surprise. Maybe a thank you note or an invitation to a special dinner. He could be so thoughtful when he wanted to be. With a smile touching my lips, I slid my finger under the wax seal, a stylized L intertwined with a C. Liam and Chloe, of course, their special monogram. They had spent a small fortune on it, hiring a graphic designer to create a brand for their love story. A brand. That was the word Chloe had used. I thought it was cold and corporate, but I had held my tongue, as I so often did. I opened the card. The lettering inside was even more ornate, a cascade of cursive that announced, in triumphant gold ink, Chloe Me Parker and Liam Robert Vance request the honor of your presence at the celebration of their marriage. My breath hitched, my eyes scanned the details, my mind struggling to keep pace. The date was 6 weeks from now, the time 6 o'clock in the evening, and the venue the Landon Estate. A wave of dizziness washed over me. The Landon Estate. It was the place my late husband, Robert, and I had celebrated our own 25th anniversary, the last one we had before he passed away. I had taken Liam and Chloe there for brunch just last year, telling them the story, showing them the stone balcony where Robert had kissed me, and whispered that our best years were still ahead. Chloe had gushed about how romantic it was, how it was a legacy venue. But as my eyes refocused on the invitation in my trembling hand, a cold dread began to seep into my veins, chilling the initial warmth of my excitement. Below the beautiful script, there was no personalized, handwritten line for me. My name was nowhere to be seen. Instead, tucked inside the main card, was a smaller, flimsier slip of paper. It was a generic RSVP card, the kind sent to a distant cousin or a parent's business associate. It was addressed in a stranger's calligraphy to friend of the Vance family. Not mother of the groom, not even Evelyn, just a vague, impersonal title that rendered me anonymous. And then I saw it. Tucked behind the RSVP card was another, even smaller note, this one handwritten on cheap paper, a stark contrast to the luxurious invitation. The handwriting was Chloe S. I recognized the sharp, aggressive slant of her letters immediately. Evelyn, it began, without any warmth. We know you wouldn't be comfortable at such a high-profile event, with all of Liam's work colleagues and my family's friends. It's going to be a very modern affair. But we were hoping you might still want to be a part of our special day in a way that feels right for you. We would be so grateful if you'd contribute to our honeymoon fund instead. The details are on our wedding website. It would mean the world to us. XOXO, C. The air left my lungs in a single, silent gasp. The invitation slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the granite countertop. I stared at it, at the cruel little note beside it. I was not being invited to my only son's wedding. I was being solicited for a donation. I was being treated like a business acquaintance, a potential sponsor, someone whose check was welcome but whose presence was not. The words echoed in my skull, each one a separate, stinging blow. Wouldn't be comfortable. High-profile event, modern affair. It was code. She was telling me I was old-fashioned, that I was provincial. That I, the woman who had given her son everything, who owned and managed the most beloved bakery in town for 30 years, was not sophisticated enough to attend his wedding. I sank onto a stool, my legs suddenly unable to support me. My gaze fell on a framed photo on the shelf opposite me. It was of Liam, age 10, beaming with a gap-toothed smile, his arms slung around my neck. We were at the county fair, and I had just spent a small fortune on rigged games so he could win that giant stuffed elephant he was clutching. I remembered the stickiness of the cotton candy, the warmth of his small hand in mine, the absolute, uncomplicated love that had radiated from him. Where was that boy? When had he been replaced by this stranger, this man who would let his fiancée dismiss his mother with a cheap, handwritten note? For 3 years, ever since Chloe had entered our lives, I had felt this slow, creeping erosion. It started with small things. Liam stopped calling me Mom, switching to the more formal Evelyn in Chloe's presence. Our weekly Sunday dinners became monthly, then sporadic, and were always held at a restaurant of Chloe's choosing, a place where the portions were tiny and the prices were astronomical. My opinions on everything from politics to the brand of coffee I served were met with Chloe's condescending little smiles and Liam's uncomfortable silence. I had paid for Liam's entire master's degree, a sum that had eaten deeply into the savings Robert had left for me. I had given them the down payment for their ridiculously expensive condominium, a gift of $50,000 that Chloe had accepted with the casual air of someone who felt it was her due. When Liam's designer car needed a new transmission, I had paid the $5,000 repair bill without a second thought. I had financed their vacations, their designer clothes, their curated, branded lifestyle, all in the desperate, foolish hope of retaining a place in my son's life. I had mistaken his acceptance of my money for an acceptance of my love. Now, staring at this monstrously elegant invitation, I saw the truth. I was not a mother. I was a resource. I was the First National Bank of Evelyn Vance, a financial institution that was expected to provide funds quietly and without demanding a seat at the table. My hands shook with a rage so profound it felt like a physical illness. I picked up the note again, the words blurring through a haze of hot, angry tears. Contribute to our honeymoon fund. I blindly reached for my laptop, my fingers fumbling on the keys. I typed in the wedding website address. It loaded in a wash of soft pastels and professionally shot engagement photos of Liam and Chloe, gazing at each other in a field of wildflowers. They looked like strangers from a magazine. The Our Story section was a masterpiece of fiction, a saccharine narrative that detailed their whirlwind romance, conveniently omitting the fact that they had met because I had introduced them. Chloe was the daughter of a woman in my book club, a connection I now bitterly regretted forging. I clicked on the registry tab. It was a digital catalog of their greed. They weren't asking for toasters or towels. They were asking for cash. There was the honeymoon fund, with different tiers of contributions. For $500, you could buy them a couple's massage in Bali. For $1,000, a romantic dinner under the stars. For $5,000, you could sponsor their business class airfare. There were other funds, too, a new home art fund, a future puppy fund. It was a shameless, digital panhandling operation disguised as a celebration of love. My son, my sweet Liam, had co-signed this. He had approved it. He had looked at this list of demands and thought it was perfectly acceptable to send it to his mother in lieu of an actual invitation. The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. I had spent my entire life making sure he never wanted for anything. After Robert died, I had worked double shifts at the bakery, my hands raw from kneading dough, my feet aching, all to ensure Liam could go to the best schools, have the best clothes, be the person he wanted to be. And this was my reward, to be deemed unworthy of watching him get married. I closed the laptop with a sharp snap. The silence of my house was deafening. It was a house filled with memories of him, of scraped knees and bedtime stories, of proud report cards and awkward teenage years. For the first time, those memories didn't bring comfort. They felt like evidence of a crime, the scene of my own slow, willing self-erasure. I stood up and walked into my office. My hands were steady now, the shaking replaced by a cold, clear certainty. I sat down at my desk, the antique oak piece that had been Robert's, and looked at my reflection in the dark screen of the monitor. The woman staring back at me looked tired. She looked like a fool, but there was a spark in her eyes, a flicker of the businesswoman who had built a beloved community institution from nothing but flour, sugar, and sheer force of will. Chloe had made a critical error. She had underestimated me. She saw a lonely widow, a soft touch, an endless well of cash. She did not see the woman who had faced down bankers, negotiated with tough union leaders, and survived the crushing grief of losing the love of her life. She saw a pushover. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. They wanted the land and estate. That beautiful, historic place, so full of my own precious memories, was to be the stage for my public humiliation. A chilling smile, one that felt utterly foreign, touched my lips. A high-profile event, Chloe had called it. Oh, it was going to be high-profile, all right, just not in the way she imagined. I opened my laptop again, but this time I didn't go to their wedding website. I went to the county's public records database. I had a hunch. Just a tiny, wild little thought. I remembered the owner of the estate, a man named Arthur Landon, telling me during our anniversary dinner how tired he was of the upkeep, how he was thinking of selling. I typed Landon Estate into the search bar. My heart began to pound, a slow, heavy drumbeat of an idea so audacious, so exquisitely vengeful that it made me feel alive for the first time in years. The screen refreshed, and there it was. Under property status, a single beautiful word, for sale. The war had begun, and they had just handed me the perfect weapon. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, a feat I hadn't managed since the early days of the bakery. The grief and shock from the night before had cooled, solidifying into something hard and sharp, resolve. I made my coffee, and instead of sitting at the kitchen island, staring at the ghosts of my son's childhood, I took it into my office. I was no longer just Evelyn Vance, the grieving widow and doting mother. I was Evelyn Vance, the proprietor of the Rolling Pin Bakery, a business that had not only survived but thrived for 3 decades in a brutal market. I needed to think like a businesswoman. My first call was not to Liam, nor to a lawyer. It was to Eleanor Vance, my late husband's sister, my sister-in-law, and the only person in the world who could match my own pragmatism with a healthy dose of righteous indignation. She picked up on the second ring, her voice as crisp as a winter morning. "Evelyn, it's 6 a.m. The bakery better be on fire." "It might as well be," I said, and the whole story came tumbling out. The invitation, the cruel little note, the honeymoon fund, the Landon estate. I read Chloe's note to her verbatim. For a full 10 seconds, there was nothing but stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then Eleanor let out a low whistle. "That little viper," she said, her voice devoid of any surprise, only grim confirmation. "I never trusted her. She has the eyes of a tax auditor. And Liam, oh, Evie, I'm so sorry. He's let you down so completely." "He has," I agreed, my voice flat. There was no room for tears this morning. "But this isn't about my hurt feelings anymore, Elle. This is about strategy." I told her about the estate being for sale. This time, the silence was shorter, followed by a slow, wicked chuckle. "Evelyn Vance, you sly fox, you're not just thinking about it, are you? You're going to do it." "I'm going to try," I said, "but I need to be smart about it. I need to understand the financial implications. This isn't buying a new oven for the bakery. This is monumental." "Robert would be so proud of you right now," Eleanor said, and that simple sentence was enough to bolster my courage. "He always said you were the toughest person he ever met. He said you had a spine of pure steel, even if you tried to hide it under layers of sweetness and butter frosting." Her words were a gift. After we hung up, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. My next call was to my financial advisor, a meticulous and unflappable man named David Chen. I scheduled an urgent meeting for that afternoon. Then and only then did I allow myself to think about confronting my son. I knew I had to do it, but I dreaded it. The thought of hearing him defend Chloe's actions, of hearing him parrot her condescending excuses, was a knife to the heart. But it was a necessary step. I needed to hear it from his own mouth. I needed to extinguish any lingering embers of hope that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. I texted him. "Liam, we need to talk. Please call me when you have a moment." 2 hours passed. The sun was fully up, streaming through my office window. My phone remained silent. He was ignoring me. Of course he was. He was probably with Chloe, strategizing how to handle the inevitable fallout from his sentimental mother. Finally, a text came back, not from Liam, but from an unknown number. "Evelyn, it's Chloe. Liam is in a very important meeting right now and can't be disturbed. Is everything okay? Did you see our invite? I hope you loved it. I handpicked the calligrapher myself." Her audacity was breathtaking. She was running interference, managing him, treating him like a child who couldn't be trusted to speak to his own mother. The rage, which had been a low simmer, began to boil again. I typed back a message, my fingers flying across the screen. "Chloe, I received the invitation, and the special note you included. I would like to speak to my son about it, please." Her reply was instantaneous. "Oh, good, I'm so glad it arrived safely. Was my note not clear?" Liam and I discussed it at length, and we both agreed that a large, loud wedding just isn't your scene anymore. We wanted to spare you the discomfort. We are only thinking of you. Thinking of me? The lie was so bald-faced, so insulting, it was almost laughable. She was a terrible liar, all smoke and no substance. "Put Liam on the phone, Chloe," I texted back, my tone leaving no room for argument. Another long pause. 10 minutes stretched into 15. I imagined the frantic, whispered conversation happening on the other end. Finally, my phone rang. It was Liam. "Mom," he said, his voice tentative, laced with a guilt he couldn't quite conceal. "Chloe said you were upset." "Upset," I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. "Upset is what you feel when the bakery runs out of your favorite scone, Liam. This is something else entirely. I want you to explain to me why I am not invited to my own son's wedding." "It's not like that," he stammered, the words sounding rehearsed. "Of course you're invited, in a way. We want you to be part of it. That's why we sent you the link to the honeymoon fund." I cut him off. "Stop. Just stop talking for a second and listen to what you're saying. You think that asking me for money is the same as asking me to be there when you get married. You think your mother's role in this milestone is to be an anonymous donor." "Chloe thought, it's just a really modern wedding, Mom. It's for people in our circle, you know. Her parents' friends are flying in from Europe. My CEO will be there. It's a networking thing as much as it is a wedding. We didn't want you to feel out of place." Out of place? At my own son's wedding. The son whose private school tuition I paid for by selling my own mother's jewelry. The son whose first suit I bought him so he could look sharp at his first job interview, the one that led to this CEO he was so desperate to impress. "And the Landon estate, Liam?" I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Did you forget what that place means to this family, to your father and me, or was that Chloe's idea too? To take a place so full of my memories and overwrite them with her own?" He was silent. I had him. He knew what he had done, what he had allowed to happen. "It's just a venue, Mom," he finally mumbled, a pathetic defense. "It's the best one in the state. Chloe had her heart set on it. And what Chloe wants, Chloe gets, is that it? Even if it means throwing your own mother away like a piece of trash." I could feel the tears I had suppressed all morning finally welling up, hot and bitter. "You let her write that note. You let her dismiss me. You stood by and let her turn your wedding into a fundraiser and your mother into a mark." "You're being dramatic," he said, his voice gaining a defensive edge as Chloe's influence reasserted itself. "Chloe loves you. She says you're like a second mother to her. We're doing this for you, to protect you." "Like a second mother she's happy to take money from but not be seen with in public," I shot back. "Listen to me very carefully, Liam. You and Chloe have made your choice. You have decided that I am not family, that I am merely a financial convenience. So be it. But you need to understand that conveniences can be shut off. Don't call me again. Don't text me. And you can tell your fiancé that I will indeed be contributing to your wedding. I'm going to make a contribution you will never, ever forget." I hung up the phone before he could respond. My heart was shattered, the conversation having confirmed my worst fears. There was no misunderstanding. This was a deliberate, calculated act of exclusion and greed. The last vestiges of the loving son I thought I knew had vanished, replaced by Chloe's puppet. But as the tears subsided, the cold resolve returned, stronger than ever. The fight was no longer just in my head. It was real. I looked at the clock. I had a few hours before my meeting with David Chen. It was time to do some research. I wasn't going into this battle unarmed. I spent the rest of the morning digging into the financials of the Landon estate, downloading property reports, zoning regulations, and recent sales of comparable venues. I was preparing for the biggest negotiation of my life. I was no longer just buying a property. I was buying back my dignity. The offices of Chen Financial were a world away from the warm, fragrant chaos of my bakery. Here, everything was cool tones of gray and blue, glass walls, and the quiet, respectful hum of money being managed. It was a place of logic and numbers, and it was exactly what I needed. David Chen greeted me himself, his usually placid face etched with concern. He was a man half my age, but he had the soul of a much older, wiser person. He had managed my portfolio for a decade, first alongside Robert, and then just for me after he passed. He had seen me through the darkest days of my life. "Evelyn," he said, foregoing a handshake and instead placing a comforting hand on my shoulder as he led me into his office. "Your email was brief. Is everything all right?" I sat in the leather chair opposite his polished desk and took a deep breath. "David, I'm about to propose something that will sound impulsive and possibly insane. I need you to listen to me not just as my financial advisor, but as someone who knows I am not an insane or impulsive person." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "I'm listening." "I want to buy the Landon estate," I said, the words hanging in the still air between us. David's eyebrows shot up into his hairline. He sat back, his professional composure momentarily fractured. He slowly took off his glasses and began to polish them with a microfiber cloth, a habit he had when he was processing unexpected information. "The Landon estate," he repeated, his voice carefully neutral. "The event venue, I see. May I ask why?" I gave him the condensed version, leaving out the most gut-wrenching emotional details but providing the core facts. The disinvitation, the solicitation for cash, and the choice of that specific, memory-filled venue. I explained that my son and his fiancée had a contract to rent it for their wedding in 6 weeks. When I finished, he put his glasses back on and looked at me, his gaze sharp but not unkind. "Evelyn, my first duty is to your financial health. My second is to you as a friend. As your advisor, I have to say that liquidating that much of your portfolio for a single, non-liquid asset like a commercial property is an enormous risk. We're talking about millions of dollars. It would fundamentally change your financial profile from comfortable and secure to highly leveraged." "I've looked at the preliminary numbers," I countered, sliding a folder I had prepared across his desk. "The listing price is high, but the venue has consistent booking revenue. With my bakery's reputation for catering and my own management experience, I believe I can increase its profitability by at least 15% in the first 2 years." David opened the folder, his eyes scanning my neatly printed spreadsheets and projections. He was silent for several minutes, flipping through the pages. I had worked furiously, using the business planning software I used for the bakery to outline a potential new business model for the estate. "This is thorough," he admitted, looking impressed. "You've factored in property taxes, insurance, staffing costs, marketing budgets. You've been busy." "I know how to run a business, David," I said softly. "I'm not just a baker, I'm a CEO. I've just been applying my skills to a smaller company for the last 30 years. "I know you are," he said. He closed the folder and looked at me directly. "Now, as your friend, are you sure about this? Is this about a business opportunity, or is this about your son? Because a decision of this magnitude, made from a place of anger or pain, can have devastating consequences." His question was fair. It was the question I had been asking myself all morning. Was this just a spectacularly expensive act of revenge? I thought of Robert. He had always been the risk-taker, the one who pushed me to expand the bakery from a small corner shop to the institution it was today. "Never make a business decision with your heart, Evie," he used to say. "But never go into business without it either." It started with my heart, David, I confessed. It started with a pain so deep I thought it would break me. But the more I look at it, the more I see an opportunity. Not just for revenge, but for a new chapter. Liam is gone. The son I knew is gone. For years, my life, my finances, everything has revolved around setting him up, making sure he was secure. Now, for the first time, I'm thinking about what I want to build for myself. Maybe this is it. David steepled his fingers, studying my face. He saw the pain there, but he also saw the steel Alina had talked about. He saw the businesswoman. "All right," he said finally, a decision made. Let's look at the numbers for real. Let's see what it would take to make this happen. We'd need to sell the municipal bonds first, that's the most liquid. We might have to take a penalty on the long-term CDs. We will not touch your core retirement stocks. This has to be done without jeopardizing your future. If we can make an offer, it will need to be a strong one. All cash, if possible. That gets a seller's attention. For the next hour, we dove into the intricate details of my financial life. We mapped out scenarios, calculated tax implications, and charted a path. It was possible. It would be tight, and it would leave me with far less of a safety net than I was used to, but it was undeniably possible. As I stood to leave, David walked me to the door. "Evelyn," he said, his voice gentle, "be careful. This will create a war." "I know," I replied, meeting his gaze. But for the first time in a very long time, I feel like I'm on the right side of it. I left his office feeling not just resolved, but powerful. The plan wasn't just a fantasy anymore. It was real, tangible, and in motion. Instead of going straight home, I drove to the bakery. I needed to be in my element, to be surrounded by the life I had built with my own two hands. The moment I walked through the back door, the familiar sense of yeast, caramelized sugar, and melting chocolate enveloped me like a warm hug. The comforting clatter of mixing bowls, the rhythmic thump of the dough sheeter, and the cheerful chatter of my staff were a balm to my wounded soul. This was my kingdom. I had built it, and no one could take it away from me. Sarah, my bakery manager who had been with me for 15 years, saw me and immediately rushed over, her brow furrowed with worry. "Evelyn, are you okay? I've been calling your cell. You missed the morning check-in." I had completely forgot. For the first time in years, the bakery's morning report had not been the first thing on my mind. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I had an urgent personal matter to attend to." She searched my face, her keen eyes missing nothing. "Is it Liam? Is everything all right with him and Chloe?" She asked it with the careful neutrality of someone who had witnessed Chloe's dismissive behavior towards me on more than one occasion. "Everything is about to be very, very different," I said, a cryptic answer that was all I could offer right now. I walked through the bustling kitchen, greeting my bakers by name, inspecting the morning's bake. I saw the trays of croissants, their delicate layers a testament to hours of skilled labor. I saw the wedding cake consultations happening in the front of the shop, young couples dreaming of their perfect day. For a moment, a wave of sadness washed over me. I was a part of so many love stories, a purveyor of joy for countless families. Yet my own family story was turning into a tragedy. I watched a young baker, Maria, piping intricate lace patterns onto a tiered cake. She was a true artist, my artist. And my creations, my bakery, my legacy, were deemed not high-profile enough for my own son. Before I left, I stopped by Sarah's small office. "Sarah," I began, closing the door behind me. "I may be making some significant financial moves in the coming weeks. It might affect our expansion plans for the downtown location. I need to know that I can count on you to keep things running smoothly here, no matter what." "Of course, Evelyn," she said without hesitation. "This place is my life too, whatever you need. Is there anything I can do?" "Just keep making the best damn pastries in the state," I said with a smile. Her loyalty, the simple, uncomplicated support of my work family, was a stark contrast to the betrayal from my own blood. When I got home, the house felt less like a tomb of memories and more like a command center. The invitation was still on the counter, a gleaming reminder of the battle ahead. I picked it up, ran my finger over the embossed lettering of the Landon estate, and then I walked calmly to my office. I found the real estate listing for the estate online. It was represented by a premier commercial realtor named Genevieve Dubois. I looked up her picture. She had a sharp, no-nonsense face and a reputation for closing tough deals. She was exactly the kind of person I needed. I dialed her number, my heart pounding a steady, determined rhythm. "Genevieve Dubois speaking." Her voice was as crisp and professional as I had expected. "Ms. Dubois, my name is Evelyn Vance," I said, my voice even and clear. "I'm calling about your listing for the Landon estate. I am a serious, pre-qualified cash buyer." I'd like to schedule a private tour of the property at your earliest possible convenience. There was a brief, surprised pause on the other end of the line. Mrs. Vance, I'd be happy to. We're having an open house for qualified buyers next Tuesday. I can add you to the list. No, I said firmly. I don't do open houses. I require a private viewing. I'm available tomorrow morning. My assertiveness seemed to pique her interest. It was the tone of a serious player, not a curious tire kicker. Tomorrow morning is tight, she said, a hint of challenge in her voice. Mr. Landon, the owner, is a very private man. I'm sure he is, I replied smoothly. Please tell Mr. Landon that Evelyn Vance of the Rolling Pin Bakery would be honored to meet with him personally to discuss the future of his beautiful estate. Robert Vance was my husband. We celebrated our 25th anniversary there. I believe Mr. Landon will remember us. There was another, longer pause. I could hear the faint clicking of a keyboard as she likely searched my name. I will call him, she said, her tone having shifted from dismissive to intrigued. I will call you back within the hour to confirm. I hung up the phone, a small, triumphant smile playing on my lips. I had invoked Robert's name, our shared history with the estate. It wasn't just a commercial property to me, and I needed the owner to know that. This was my opening move, my first step onto the battlefield. I had bypassed the gatekeepers and made a direct appeal to the king. Now, all I could do was wait and see if he would grant me an audience. The fight for the Landon estate and for my own self-respect had truly begun. An hour and a half later, a time in which I paced my living room like a caged lion, my phone rang. It was Genevieve Dubois. Mrs. Vance, she said, her voice now carrying a distinct note of respect. Mr. Landon does indeed remember you and your husband. He spoke very highly of you both. He has cleared his schedule and would be pleased to give you a personal tour of the estate tomorrow at 10 a.m. Victory, it was a small win, but it felt momentous. I had secured my meeting. Thank you, Ms. Dubois, I will be there. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in a very long time. I cooked a meal just for myself. Not a simple sandwich or a reheated soup, but a proper dinner. I made Robert's favorite, pan-seared salmon with a lemon dill sauce and roasted asparagus. I opened a bottle of good Chardonnay, the kind I usually saved for special occasions. Tonight was a special occasion. It was the eve of my emancipation. As I ate, I sat not in the kitchen, but in the formal dining room, at the head of the long, polished table that had hosted so many family dinners. I looked at the empty chairs, at Liam's place, at the spot where Chloe had sat so many times, smiling her thin, insincere smile. I felt a pang of loss, a deep, sorrowful ache for the family I thought I had. But for the first time, the sadness wasn't overwhelming. It was accompanied by a new, unfamiliar feeling, a sense of lightness, of a burden being lifted. For years, every decision, every dollar, every ounce of my energy had been funneled towards them. Now, that energy was mine again. I slept soundly, and the next morning I dressed for battle. I chose a tailored navy blue pantsuit, a crisp white silk blouse, and low, sensible heels. My hair was styled in a neat chignon, and my only jewelry was a pair of simple pearl earrings and my wedding ring. I looked professional, confident, and, I hoped, like a woman who could be entrusted with a multi-million-dollar legacy. Driving up the long, winding driveway to the Landon estate was a surreal experience. The last time I had been here, I had been in the passenger seat, my hand in Robert's, feeling like the luckiest woman in the world. Today I was alone, my hands gripping the steering wheel, on a mission born of betrayal. The estate was even more beautiful than I remembered. A grand, stone manor house sat atop a hill, surrounded by acres of manicured lawns, ancient oak trees, and rose gardens that were just beginning to bud. It exuded an air of timeless elegance and quiet dignity. This place deserved better than to be a backdrop for Chloe's shallow, high-profile networking event. Arthur Landon was waiting for me on the front steps, alongside Genevieve Dubois. He was an elderly man, likely in his late 80s, with a kind face and eyes that held the quiet wisdom of a long life. He was leaning on a handsome, carved wooden cane. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice a gravelly but warm baritone. He bypassed Genevieve's attempt at a formal introduction and took my hand in both of his. Evelyn, it is a genuine pleasure to see you again, though I am so very sorry for the circumstances. Robert was a fine man, a very fine man indeed. Thank you, Mr. Landon, I said, genuinely touched by his warmth. He loved this place, we both did. I know, he said with a sad smile. That's why I agreed to this meeting. When Genevieve told me who was calling, I knew this wasn't just another investor looking to flip a property. Come, let's walk. For the next 2 hours, Mr. Landon gave me a tour that was less of a sales pitch and more of a loving farewell. He showed me every corner of the estate, from the grand ballroom with its soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers to the intimate library with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and the scent of old leather and wood smoke. He told me stories about his family, about the generations of Landons who had lived and loved within these walls. He showed me the secret garden his wife had planted before she passed away, a place of quiet beauty and profound peace. Genevieve followed us, a silent observer, occasionally pointing out a practical feature: the state-of-the-art kitchen, the recently updated electrical systems, the separate catering entrance. But the real tour was from Mr. Landon. He was showing me the soul of his home. We ended on the stone balcony, the very one where Robert had kissed me. I looked out over the rolling hills, the same view we had shared. I'm too old for this place now, Evelyn, Mr. Landon said quietly, leaning on his cane. My children have their own lives in other cities. It needs a new caretaker, someone who will love it, not just own it. I've had offers from hotel chains, from developers who want to carve it up into McMansions. It breaks my heart. He turned to look at me, his gaze direct. Why do you want it? This was the moment. My carefully prepared business projections and profit and loss statements felt wholly inadequate. He wasn't asking for my business plan, he was asking for my heart. I took a breath and told him the truth. I told him about Robert, about our anniversary, and about the deep personal connection I felt to the estate. And then I told him about Liam and Chloe. I told him that they had booked the venue for their wedding and that they had uninvited me, the mother of the groom. I told him I had initially sought to buy it out of anger, but that in the process I had realized it was something more. This place, I said, my voice thick with emotion as I gestured to the view, is a part of my past, a beautiful, cherished part. My son and his fiancée want to erase that past, to build their future on top of my memories without even acknowledging them. I want to buy this estate to preserve its legacy, and to start building a new legacy of my own. I want to turn it into the premier destination for celebrations in the state, a place where families, all families, are welcomed and honored. I would combine it with my bakery, offer a level of service and personal care that no hotel chain could ever match. Mr. Landon listened, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he was silent for a long time, looking out at the horizon. I held my breath, certain I had overstepped, that my personal drama had been inappropriate. Finally, he turned to me, and there were tears glistening in his wise old eyes. My own son, he said, his voice husky, tried to have me declared incompetent 3 years ago so he could sell this land to a developer. Greed does terrible things to people, Evelyn. It can poison the love between a parent and a child. He patted my hand. You have been through a great trial, and you have met it not with bitterness, but with a vision. You want to build something beautiful. My wife, Eleanor, she would have liked that very much. He then turned to his realtor. Genevieve, cancel the open house. We will be entering into an exclusive negotiation with Mrs. Vance. Genevieve's professionally composed face broke into a genuine smile. Yes, Mr. Landon. The relief that washed over me was so profound it almost buckled my knees. I hadn't just made an impression, I had found an ally. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of legal and financial activity. David Chen and Genevieve Dubois, with Mr. Landon's full cooperation, worked at a breakneck pace. We conducted inspections, reviewed contracts, and finalized the financing. There was one significant hurdle: the existing event contracts, including the one for Liam and Chloe's wedding. They have a signed contract and have paid a 50% deposit. Genevieve explained to me during a meeting in her office. Legally, the new owner of the estate is obligated to honor that contract. You cannot simply cancel their wedding. I have no intention of canceling their wedding, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. Genevieve and David exchanged a confused look. I don't understand, David said. I thought the whole point was. The point was to take control, I clarified. The point was to stop being a victim and become the master of my own circumstances. They wanted the Landon estate for their high-profile wedding. Well, they're going to get it. But it will be on my terms. As the new owner, I will be the one in charge of every single detail. A look of dawning comprehension, followed by immense respect, spread across Genevieve's face. "Oh, this is going to be good," she murmured. The closing was scheduled for a Friday, exactly 4 weeks before the wedding. Mr. Landon had been incredibly generous, accepting an offer that was slightly below the official asking price in exchange for the assurance that I would be the new steward of his family's home. The deal was done. As I signed the final documents, my hand was as steady as a rock. I was now the owner of the Landon estate. That afternoon, I drove back to my new property. It was mine. The grand stone house, the ancient trees, the quiet, secret garden, it was all mine. I walked through the empty rooms, not as a guest, but as the proprietor. My mind was buzzing with plans. My first official act was to call a meeting with the estate's event manager, a woman named Christine who had been with Mr. Landon for years. I needed to understand every detail of the Vance Parker wedding plan. Christine, a hyper-organized woman with a clipboard permanently attached to her hand, met me in the estate's office. She was nervous about the change in ownership, but I quickly put her at ease. "Christine," I said, "I want to assure you that your job is secure. In fact, I'm going to need your help more than ever. I want to talk about the wedding scheduled for 4 weeks from today, the Parker Vance wedding." "Of course," she said, opening a thick binder. "The bride, Miss Parker, has been very specific about her requirements." "I can imagine," I said dryly. "Walk me through it. The caterer, the florist, the band, the lighting, everything." For the next hour, Christine detailed Chloe's extravagant vision. A celebrity caterer flown in from New York, a florist who specialized in creating massive, gravity-defying installations, a 10-piece band, a custom-built dance floor. The budget was astronomical, and I noted with grim satisfaction a significant portion of the final payments were still outstanding. "The final payments for the caterer, florist, and band are all due next week," Christine confirmed, pointing to a payment schedule. "Miss Parker has been a bit slow in remitting the final deposits." "I see," I said, an idea beginning to form. "Christine, I want you to send an email to Miss Parker. Inform her that the Landon estate is under new ownership and management, effective immediately. All future communications, and more importantly, all future payments are to be directed to the new proprietor, me." Christine's eyes widened. "You want me to? You're the proprietor, and you're the groom's." She trailed off, a look of horrified understanding on her face. "I am the mother of the groom," I confirmed, my voice as smooth as ice. "And I am now, for all intents and purposes, her wedding planner. Please send that email, Christine. I believe Miss Parker and I have a great deal to discuss." As I left the estate that evening, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "This has to be a joke. Call me immediately. C." The battle for the Landon estate was over. I had won. But the real war, the war for the wedding itself, was just about to begin, and I was holding all the cards. I let Chloe's frantic text sit unanswered for a full hour. I drove home, poured myself a glass of iced tea, and sat on my patio, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The quiet satisfaction I felt was profound. For the first time in this entire ordeal, I was not reacting to a crisis Chloe had created. I was the one setting the terms. I was in control. When I finally felt ready, I picked up the phone and dialed her number. She answered on the first half ring, her voice a sharp, panicked staccato. "Evelyn." What is the meaning of that email from the estate? It has to be some kind of insane mistake. You bought it. You bought the entire estate. "Hello, Chloe," I said, my voice the epitome of calm. "Yes, I bought it. It's a lovely piece of property, don't you think? It has so much potential." "Potential? What are you talking about?" She shrieked, her voice rising in pitch. "We have a wedding there in 4 weeks, a legally binding contract." "Yes, you do," I agreed cheerfully. "And as the new owner, I fully intend to honor that contract. You have nothing to worry about. Your wedding will proceed as planned." There was a moment of confused silence. This was not the reaction she had expected. She was braced for a cancellation, for a fight. My easy compliance seemed to unnerve her more than any outright hostility would have. You're going to let us have the wedding?" she asked, suspicion lacing every word. "Of course," I said. "It's a business, Chloe, you're a client, and the client is always right. However, as the new management, I do have a few standard procedural updates I need to go over with you. For instance, all outstanding vendor payments now need to be routed through my office for approval. I see from your file that you have several large balances due next week. The caterer, the florist, it's quite a list. I'll need you to get those funds to me by Monday so I can ensure the vendors are paid on time and your services are secured." Another silence, this one longer, more fraught. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. She had likely been stalling, juggling credit cards and payment plans, hoping to float the costs until the wedding gifts. And she hoped my honeymoon contribution came rolling in. Now she was faced with a hard, non-negotiable deadline from a source she could not charm or bully. Yes, of course," she stammered. "Liam is handling the finances. I'll have him call you to arrange a wire transfer." "Wonderful," I said. "I'll also be scheduling a mandatory planning meeting with you and Liam later this week to go over the final details of the event. As the on-site proprietor, I like to be personally involved in ensuring every celebration is perfect. I'll have my assistant send you some available times." "Your assistant?" She scoffed, a flicker of her old arrogance returning. "You don't have an assistant." "I do now," I said sweetly. "Owning a large estate is a lot of work. One of my first hires was a very capable young woman to manage my schedule. You'll like her. Now, I have to run. So lovely to chat, Chloe. I'm so looking forward to planning this special day with you." I hung up, leaving her in what I could only imagine was a state of sputtering rage and confusion. I had completely upended her narrative. She had tried to cast me as an irrelevant, out-of-touch old woman who needed to be hidden away. I had just reintroduced myself as the powerful owner of her dream venue, the person who held the fate of her high-profile event in her hands. My next call was to my bakery manager, Sarah. "Sarah," I said, "I need a favor. I need you to act as my personal assistant for the next 4 weeks. It will involve scheduling, emails, and dealing with a difficult client." Sarah, who had been on the receiving end of Chloe's condescension many times, didn't hesitate. "Say no more," she said, a hint of glee in her voice. "It will be my absolute pleasure. What's my first task, boss?" "Send an email to Chloe Parker and Liam Vance. Inform them that they are required to attend a final wedding logistics meeting at the Landon estate this Friday at 2 p.m. Attendance is mandatory to confirm their event details." I instructed her to sign it, Sarah Miller, assistant to Evelyn Vance, proprietor, the Landon estate. The trap was set. Now, I just had to prepare for the confrontation. Friday arrived, a bright, clear autumn day. I spent the morning at the estate, meeting with the grounds crew and the housekeeping staff, getting a feel for the rhythm of the place. I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years, not since the early, challenging days of building the bakery. This was more than a house. It was a project, a canvas. At precisely 2 p.m., Liam's sleek, overpriced sports car came crunching up the gravel driveway. I watched from the window of the estate's grand library, which I had designated as my new office. They got out of the car, and even from a distance, I could see the tension in their posture. Chloe was dressed in a severe black dress, her face a mask of fury. Liam just looked pale and exhausted. I had Sarah show them into the library. I remained seated behind the large, imposing mahogany desk that had belonged to Mr. Landon. When they walked in, I didn't stand up. I simply looked at them, a queen surveying unwelcome courtiers. Liam, Chloe, thank you for coming, I said, my voice cool and professional. What is this, Mom? Liam burst out, foregoing any pleasantries. What are you doing? Is this some kind of sick game? It's business, Liam, I replied calmly, looking not at him, but at Chloe. Your fiancé was very clear that your wedding is a high-profile, professional event. I am simply treating it with the professionalism it deserves. Please have a seat. They sat, stiffly, in the two antique chairs facing the desk. I had a file in front of me, the same binder Christine, the event manager, had shown me. I opened it. All right, I began, my tone all business. Let's get started. First, the outstanding payments. Chloe, my office has not yet received the wire transfer for the vendor balances. They were due on Monday. As of today, your caterer and your florist have not been retained for your event date. Chloe's face went white. There was a bank delay, she lied. The money is on its way. Is it? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Because I took the liberty of calling the vendors myself this morning. They informed me that you have been pushing back their payment deadlines for weeks and that they were on the verge of canceling your contracts altogether. In fact, the florist has already had another inquiry for your date. A very lucrative one, she tells me. Liam looked at Chloe, his expression a mixture of shock and betrayal. You told me you had paid them. You told me you just needed that last $10,000 for the service fees. I was handling it. Chloe snapped at him, her composure cracking. I let their tense exchange hang in the air for a moment before continuing. This is, of course, a problem, but as the new owner of the estate, I value my vendors and my clients, so I have come up with a solution. I paused for dramatic effect. I have paid the outstanding balances myself. They both stared at me, speechless. Consider it a wedding gift, I said with a thin smile. A contribution, exactly what you asked for. I have secured your caterer, your florist, and your band. Your dream wedding is safe. Liam looked relieved, a wave of gratitude washing over his face. Mom, thank you. I knew you wouldn't. But Chloe was not grateful. She was suspicious. What's the catch? She asked, her eyes narrowing. No catch, I said smoothly. Just a few minor adjustments to the plan, which, as the person now financing the event, I'm entitled to make. Let's start with the catering. I pulled out a sheet of paper. I see you've selected a 16-course tasting menu from that very trendy New York chef. It sounds complicated, and frankly, a little pretentious. I've spoken with the chef, and we've agreed to simplify things. We'll be going with a much more elegant and crowd-pleasing 3-course menu. Chicken or fish, it will be much more efficient for the staff. You can't do that. Chloe gasped. The tasting menu was the centerpiece. It's what everyone is talking about. People will talk much more if they get a hot, delicious meal in a timely manner, I countered. Next, the flowers. I gestured to the floral plan, a ridiculously elaborate schematic of arches and hanging installations. This is a fire hazard, and it completely obstructs the natural beauty of the ballroom. I've instructed the florist to cancel these structures and instead provide simple, elegant centerpieces for each table. All white roses. A classic, so much more tasteful. Tasteful? You think you have better taste than me. Chloe was on her feet now, her voice trembling with rage. This is my wedding. You are ruining it. I am improving it, I said calmly, and I am paying for it. Now about the guest list. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I slid a piece of paper across the desk. I see you have a guest count of 200. The ballroom has a comfortable capacity of 150. For the safety and comfort of our guests, we will need to trim that list. Absolutely not, she yelled. Every single person on that list is important. Are they? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. Because I don't see my name on it, or your Aunt Aliner's, or any of Liam's cousins from his father's side of the family. It seems the people who have loved and supported Liam his entire life are not deemed important. Liam finally found his voice. Mom, please, we can add them. We can make room. Oh, I will be making room, I said, my gaze locking with Chloe S. I've already prepared a revised guest list. I've taken the liberty of removing some of the, shall we say, non-essential personnel. The C-list celebrities Chloe invited for their Instagram value. The friends who are really just business contacts. The people whose presence is about networking, not about celebrating your love. I pushed the revised list towards them. Here is the new list of 150 confirmed guests. It now includes your family. You're welcome. Chloe looked at the list, her face contorted in a mask of disbelief and fury. I had surgically dismantled her carefully curated, high-profile event, turning it back into what it should have been all along: a family wedding. "You are a monster," she whispered, her voice shaking. "A manipulative, evil monster." "I am the mother of the groom," I replied, standing up for the first time, asserting my full authority. "A role you tried to erase. I am the woman who raised the man you claim to love, a man you have encouraged to disrespect his family and forget where he came from. I am the proprietor of this establishment, and you are my client. And as my client, you have two choices." I walked around the desk until I was standing directly in front of them, looking down at where they sat. "Choice number 1, you can proceed with the wedding here, in 4 weeks, under the revised plan I have so generously provided. It will be a beautiful, tasteful, family-focused event, and I will foot the entire bill. Choice number 2, you can walk away. You can find another venue, 4 weeks before your wedding date, and try to rebook all your vendors. You can explain to your high-profile guests why the wedding they were invited to no longer exists. The choice is yours." Liam looked utterly broken, caught between the monster his fiancée had become and the formidable stranger his mother had revealed herself to be. Chloe just stared at me, her eyes burning with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. She knew she was beaten. She knew I had checkmated her. She had built her entire wedding on a foundation of my money and my memories, and I had just reclaimed both. "I'll give you 24 hours to decide," I said, walking towards the door. "Sarah will show you out. I have a business to run." With that, I left them in the silent, imposing library, the weight of their choice pressing down on them. The power had shifted, completely and irrevocably. Whatever they decided, I had already won. I had taken back my name, my dignity, and my future, and it felt absolutely wonderful. The 24 hours I gave them were a strategic gift, not of time, but of rope. I knew they didn't need the time to weigh their options. They needed it to fully comprehend that they had none. They needed to exhaust every other possibility and arrive at the bitter, inescapable conclusion that I had them cornered. And that is exactly what happened. Later that evening, Alina called me, her voice fizzing with suppressed laughter. "Evelyn, you are not going to believe this. Chloe Parker just called me, asking if I had any connections at the St. Regis or the Four Seasons. She wanted to know if they ever had last-minute openings for a major society wedding. I told her I believed they were fully booked with clown conventions and dog shows for the next 5 years. Then I wished her the best of luck with her planning and hung up. I laughed a real deep belly laugh. "She's scrambling, good." "Scrambling is an understatement," Alina said. She sounded like a cornered rat. "Oh, Evie, this is better than Shakespeare. What did Liam say? Did he have the decency to look ashamed?" "He looked like a ghost," I admitted, a flicker of the old maternal pain returning. "He's trapped, Elle, and he built the cage himself." The next afternoon, with only a few hours to spare before my deadline expired, I received an email. It was not from Chloe, but from Liam. The subject line was simply, "Wedding." The message itself was short, stripped of all emotion, a white flag of surrender. "Mom," it read, "we accept your terms. We will proceed with the wedding at the Landon estate under the plan you have outlined. Please let us know what you require from us next. Liam." There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the pain he had caused, just a stark, defeated acceptance. It was not the heartfelt reconciliation a mother might dream of, but it was something far more useful, a transfer of power. I printed the email and placed it in the front of my new wedding binder. It was the only contract I needed. My response, sent via Sarah, was immediate and professional. "Mr. Vance, thank you for your prompt confirmation. The first order of business is the issuance of new invitations. They will be sent out by the end of the week. Please provide my office with a finalized mailing list, including the full family contingent we discussed, by tomorrow at noon. Secondly, a menu and cake tasting has been scheduled for this coming Tuesday at 10 a.m. at the Rolling Pin Bakery. Your attendance along with Miss Parker's is required. Thank you. Sarah Miller, assistant to Evelyn Vance. The choice of my bakery for the tasting was a deliberate, calculated move. Chloe had considered my life's work, my beautiful, thriving business, to be provincial and unworthy. Now she would be forced to sit in the heart of my empire and sample the very food she had deemed not good enough, all under my watchful eye. It was a petty move, perhaps, but it felt exquisitely just. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the role of wedding planner with the same focused intensity I had used to build my business. I was no longer a grieving mother. I was a CEO executing a high-stakes project. My first vendor meeting was with the florist, a chic, artistic woman named Isabel. I met her not at her studio, but in the grand ballroom of the estate. "Forget the plans Miss Parker sent you," I told her, gesturing to the magnificent arched windows that framed a view of the rolling hills. "This room is the star. Our job is to accentuate it, not suffocate it." Isabel's face lit up. "Thank you," she breathed. I tried to tell her. The structures she designed were aggressive. They would have fought the natural grace of the space. "My thoughts exactly," I said. "I want classic. I want romance. I'm thinking masses of white roses, hydrangeas, and trailing greenery. Low, lush centerpieces on the tables so guests can actually see each other. 2 large, dramatic urn arrangements to flank the entrance. Simple, elegant, and timeless." We spent an hour walking the grounds, planning every detail. Isabel was a true artist, and freed from Chloe's bizarre and expensive constraints, her creativity flourished. By the time she left, she was positively beaming. "Mrs. Vance," she said, "this is going to be the most beautiful wedding I have ever designed." Next, I met with the band leader. He was a seasoned professional who looked relieved when I told him to scrap Chloe's playlist of obscure electronic music and replace it with a sophisticated mix of classic soul, jazz standards, and contemporary hits that people could actually dance to. "She wanted a rave," he confided in me with a roll of his eyes. I told her a 10-piece band wasn't the right fit, but she wouldn't listen. "I'm listening," I assured him. "I want my guests to have fun. I want them to dance until their feet hurt." The most significant meeting, however, was the tasting at the bakery. I had Sarah set up a private table in my sunlit consultation room, overlooking the main shop floor. When Liam and Chloe arrived, the bakery was bustling with its mid-morning rush. The aroma of fresh bread and coffee filled the air. It was a picture of wholesome, successful community life, everything Chloe disdained. Chloe's face was pale, her lips a thin, tight line of resentment. She looked around the bakery as if it were a leper colony. Liam just looked miserable. I greeted them with a bright, professional smile. "Liam, Chloe, so glad you could make it. Please sit. My head baker, Antonio, has prepared a few options for us." Antonio, a master pastry chef I had personally trained for a decade, wheeled in a cart laden with exquisite creations. For the main course, we sampled a perfectly roasted chicken with a rosemary jus and a delicate, pan-seared sea bass with a citrus beurre blanc. Both were simple, elegant, and flawlessly executed. "The food is good," Liam mumbled, avoiding my eyes. Chloe said nothing. She merely pushed the food around her plate with her fork. Then came the cakes. Antonio had outdone himself. There was a classic vanilla bean with raspberry filling, a decadent dark chocolate with salted caramel, and a light, sophisticated lemon and elderflower creation. "They're all delicious, Mom," Liam said, a flicker of his old self shining through. He had always had a sweet tooth. "Which is your preference?" I asked, looking directly at Chloe. She shrugged, a gesture of pure insolence. "I don't care, it's your party. Pick whatever you want." "It is not my party, Chloe," I said, my voice dropping the professional veneer and taking on a steely edge. "It is your wedding. A wedding you were prepared to exclude my family and me from. A wedding that is now only happening because of my generosity. You will show a minimum of respect. You will taste the cake, and you will give me your opinion. Or I will serve your guests plain sheet cake from a box. Do you understand me?" Liam flinched. Chloe's eyes flashed with hatred, but she picked up her fork, took a small, deliberate bite of the lemon cake, and swallowed. "The lemon is fine," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Excellent choice," I replied with a brilliant smile. "Lemon it is, a 5-tiered cake with a simple Swiss dot pattern and a cascade of fresh white roses. Antonio, you have your instructions." They left soon after, a cloud of silent fury trailing behind them. Sarah walked them to the door. When she came back, she was shaking her head. "I have never seen anyone so actively miserable," she said. She looked at that beautiful cake like it had personally offended her. "Her own bitterness is the only thing she can taste right now," I said, but I felt no pity for her. She had sown these seeds of resentment herself. Now she would have to reap the bitter harvest. In the days that followed, I took great pleasure in undoing all of Chloe's exclusionary work. I called Alina first. "Elle," I said, "I need to know if you're free on October 12th. I'm hosting a wedding, and I can't imagine it without you." Her delighted shriek was all the answer I needed. I called Liam's cousins, his aunts and uncles. With each call, I mended a piece of the family fabric that Chloe had tried to shred. Many of them had been hurt by the silence, assuming they had been deliberately snubbed. I explained that there had been a planning oversight that had now been corrected. They were all gracious and overjoyed to be included. I was reassembling Liam's history, his support system, the people who had held him as a baby and cheered for him at his graduation. Liam himself was a ghost in the machine. He did what was asked of him, provided the mailing list, showed up for his tuxedo fitting, but he was sullen and withdrawn. He called me once, late at night, his voice strained. "Mom, can't you just ease up a little? On Chloe. She's so unhappy." "Is she?" I asked, my voice devoid of sympathy. "Is she unhappy because her wedding is being planned with taste and elegance, or is she unhappy because she's not the one in control? Did she ever once consider my happiness, Liam, when she wrote me that note? When she decided I wasn't good enough to be in the same room as her high-profile friends?" "It wasn't like that," he started, the old, weak excuse. "It was exactly like that," I cut him off. "You made your choice, Liam. You chose her vision over your family. Now you have to live with the consequences of that choice. The wedding will be beautiful. It will be a day filled with love and family. If Chloe is unhappy with that, then the problem is not with me. It's with her." He had no answer to that. We ended the call, the chasm between us wider than ever. It hurt, but it was a clean, surgical pain, not the festering wound of constant disrespect I had lived with for years. The week before the wedding, the new invitations arrived from the printer. They were perfect. Thick, creamy cardstock with elegant black script. They read, "Mrs. Evelyn Vance requests the honor of your presence at the marriage of her son, Liam Robert Vance, to Chloe Me Parker." My name was first. I was not a friend of the family. I was the host. I was the matriarch. I had reclaimed my rightful place. As I sealed the envelopes, each one addressed to a beloved friend or family member, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The war was over. The preparations were complete. All that was left was the day itself. I had planned a perfect, beautiful wedding. Now, I just had to see if the bride and groom would have the grace to show up. The final week before the wedding was a masterclass in controlled chaos. For me, it was the exhilarating hum of a well-oiled machine clicking into place. The estate was abuzz with activity. Trucks arrived bearing linens, cases of champagne, and what seemed like an entire forest of white roses. My bakery staff worked in shifts, preparing the hundreds of delicate pastries for the dessert buffet. I moved through it all with a calm sense of command, a general on the verge of a peaceful, decisive victory. For Chloe, I could only imagine it was a week of pure, agonizing torment. Her dream wedding, the one she had meticulously curated as a monument to her own social ambition, was being systematically erased and replaced by mine. She had been rendered a spectator at her own event. Her misery was palpable during the final walkthrough of the venue, 3 days before the wedding. She and Liam trailed behind me and Christine, the event manager, as we went over the timeline. Chloe was a thundercloud of silent fury, answering every question with a clipped, fine, or whatever. When we entered the ballroom, her composure finally shattered. The room was breathtaking. The tables were set with gleaming silver and crystal. Isabel the florist was supervising the installation of the two magnificent urn arrangements at the entrance, and the scent of thousands of roses filled the air. It was a picture of classic, undeniable elegance. It was the opposite of Chloe's jarring, modern aesthetic. "It's so bland," she said, the word dripping with venom. "It looks like a 70-year-old's birthday party." I stopped and turned to face her, my expression one of polite inquiry. "I'm 71, dear," I said with a serene smile. "So I'll take that as a compliment. I'm so glad you like it." Her face flushed a blotchy, furious red. Liam, who had been staring at the floor, finally looked up, a pained expression on his face. "It's beautiful, Mom," he said quietly. It was the first unsolicited, positive thing he had said to me in weeks. Chloe shot him a look of such profound betrayal that he visibly flinched and fell silent again. The rehearsal dinner was held the night before the wedding. I had booked the private wine cellar of an elegant Italian restaurant downtown, a place Robert and I had frequented for years. It was warm, intimate, and steeped in authentic tradition. I invited only the wedding party and immediate family, which now, of course, included Aunt Alina and Liam's cousins. It was also my first time meeting Chloe's parents, Maeve and Harrison Parker. Seeing them, I understood Chloe instantly. They were cut from the same thin, expensive cloth. Harrison was a man who sized you up with a glance, his eyes lingering on your watch and your shoes. Maeve had the brittle, preserved look of a woman who spent more time with her cosmetic surgeon than her own family. They greeted me with cool, distant smiles. "Evelyn," Maeve said, her voice tinkling like ice in a glass. "What a quaint little place you've chosen." Chloe had told us the rehearsal was meant to be at that new rooftop place, the Apex. "I made a change," I said smoothly, refusing to be baited. "I felt a family dinner deserved a more personal touch. I'm so glad you could make it." The dinner was tense. The Parkers spoke loudly about their recent trip to Monaco and the trouble they were having staffing their summer home in the Hamptons. They pointedly ignored Alina and the rest of Liam's family, creating a clear social divide in the room. Liam and Chloe sat in stony silence, pushing their food around their plates. Towards the end of the meal, I stood up, tapping my glass for attention. A hush fell over the room. "I'd like to say a few words," I began, my gaze sweeping across the table, meeting the eyes of my family, the Parkers, and finally my son. A wedding is a celebration of many things. It is, of course, a celebration of the love between two people, but it is also a celebration of family. It's a moment when we honor the past that shaped us and we look forward to the future we will build together. I paused, letting my words sink in. Family is not a convenience. It is not a guest list to be curated for professional gain. It is the foundation upon which everything else is built. It is the story of who we are. I raised my glass. I wish Liam and Chloe a future that is as strong and as beautiful as the legacy of the family they are joining. A legacy of love, of integrity, and of mutual respect. To the bride and groom. The toast was met with a chorus of "Hear, hear." From my side of the family, the Parkers offered only tight, thin smiles. Liam wouldn't look at me, but I saw a single tear trace a path down his cheek. He wiped it away angrily. Chloe just stared at her wine glass, her knuckles white. The message had been delivered, and it had been received. Later that night, I was at the estate, unable to sleep. I walked through the quiet, beautifully decorated rooms, a ghost in my own triumph. The victory felt less sweet than I had imagined. It was heavy, laden with the cost of what I had lost. I had my dignity back, but I had lost my son. I was standing on the stone balcony, looking out at the moonlit hills when I heard a soft footstep behind me. It was Liam. He was alone. "I couldn't sleep," he said, his voice raspy. He came to stand beside me, not looking at me, but out at the view. We stood in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the chirping of crickets in the cool night air. "This was Dad's favorite view," he said finally. "I know," I replied. "Your speech tonight," he started, then trailed off, unable to finish. I meant every word, Liam, I said softly. He finally turned to face me, and in the pale moonlight, I could see the profound, gut-wrenching turmoil in his eyes. He looked like the lost 10-year-old boy from the photograph in my kitchen. "Why are you doing all of this, Mom?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Is it just to punish us, to humiliate Chloe?" I looked at my son, at the man he had become, and I felt a wave of sorrow so deep it was a physical ache. "Oh, Liam," I said, my own voice thick with unshed tears. "This was never about punishment. This was about respect. It was about reminding you that I am your mother, that I am a person, that my love, my support, and my presence in your life are not things to be discarded when they become inconvenient. I didn't buy this house to take something away from you. I bought it to reclaim something you and Chloe tried to take away from me, my place in this family." He looked down, unable to hold my gaze. "She loves me," he mumbled, a weak defense of the woman who had led him to this moment. "Does she?" I asked, my question gentle but pointed. "Does she love the man I raised, the boy who was kind and loyal and who knew the difference between right and wrong? Or does she love the idea of you, the successful man with the impressive job and the mother who would silently fund any lifestyle she desired? There is a difference, Liam. I hope, for your sake, you figure it out one day." I reached out and touched his arm, my first gesture of affection in weeks. He didn't pull away. "The wedding tomorrow will be beautiful," I said. "All you have to do is show up, say your vows, and try to be happy. Everything has been taken care of." I turned and walked back inside, leaving him alone on the balcony with the ghosts of his father's memory and the weight of his own choices. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and perfect, a flawless blue sky arching over the estate. I was up at dawn, a strange sense of calm settling over me. The war was over. The day would unfold as I had planned. I spent the morning with Alina, getting our hair and makeup done in my private suite at the estate. We sipped mimosas and reminisced, our laughter echoing in the sun-filled room. I had chosen my dress months ago, back when I believed I would be a cherished guest. It was a pale silver-blue gown, elegant and understated. Putting it on, I felt not like a guest, but like a queen in her castle. As the ceremony time approached, the guests began to arrive. I stood in the grand foyer, greeting them personally. My family, my friends, my bakery staff, the people who formed the true fabric of my life, all surrounded me with genuine warmth and love. They all knew some version of the story, and their presence felt like a shield of support. Christine came to find me, a headset discreetly tucked behind her ear. "Mrs. Vance, 5 minutes to ceremony start. The bride is ready." She said the word with a slight, almost imperceptible hesitation. I walked to the small antechamber where Chloe was waiting with her parents. She was in her wedding gown, a ridiculously expensive designer creation that was more architecture than dress. It was cold and severe, just like her. She looked beautiful, like a statue carved from ice. There was no joy in her eyes, only a cold, hard resignation. "It's time," I said simply. Maeve Parker fussed with Chloe's veil. "You look perfect, darling," she cooed. "Don't let anyone ruin your special day." Her eyes flickered towards me, a clear and pointed barb. I ignored her. My business was not with the mother, but with the bride. "Chloe," I said, my voice low and even. "For the next few hours, we are not adversaries. We are two women who, for better or worse, are about to be family. I have done my part. I have created a beautiful day for you and my son. The rest is up to you. You can walk down that aisle with bitterness in your heart, or you can choose to find some joy in this moment. The choice is yours." She looked at me, her expression unreadable. For a fleeting second, I saw a flicker of something beyond the anger, vulnerability perhaps, fear. Then it was gone, replaced by the familiar icy mask. She turned without a word and took her father's arm. I took my seat in the front row. The string quartet began to play. The ceremony was taking place in the rose garden under a canopy of white blossoms. It was perfect. Liam was waiting at the altar. He looked impossibly handsome in his tuxedo, but his eyes were shadowed, his smile strained. Then the music swelled, and Chloe began her walk down the aisle. As she approached the altar, her eyes were fixed, not on my son, but on me. She held my gaze, and in that long, silent moment, a final, unspoken declaration of war passed between us. The battle for the wedding was over, but the battle for the heart of the Vance family had just begun. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was ready to fight it for as long as it took.